Then you have something that's important when you're dealing with depression, anxiety, is also to help to regulate then your neurotransmitters. And there are 3 neurotransmitters that are very important when you're dealing with any kind of anxiety or depression. Probably my favorite one when you're dealing with anxiety is the neurotransmitter GABA. And then it's the next one is the neurotransmitter serotonin. Are you familiar? Anyone not familiar with these 2 neurotransmitters?
Serotonin, no, it's familiar.
Serotonin?
Yeah.
Okay. So GABA, it has just a relaxing, it's an amino acid, and also it's a neurotransmitter, and it has a very anti-anxiety effect on a person. It's just very relaxing, and you can, dosage wise, I mean obviously from person to person, but I mean some cases I have like 1500 milligrams, 3 times a day. As sometimes if you do too much, you can just feel a little bit kind of a tingling or burning in your body, which is completely harmless, but it's just kind of a feeling that you're feeling in your body. But GABA is fantastic when you're dealing with anxiety, and then also then to combine it then with serotonin precursors. And the serotonin precursors are, you have kind of a cascading event where you have tryptophan, that then gets converted to 5-HTP, that then gets converted then to serotonin.
For sleep.
It helps you sleep. It also helps you feel happier. So if you do a little bit more of it, it can make you feel a little bit sleepy. But serotonin, so usually nutritionally, you have the supplements like 5-HTP, like I have here. You can take some of that, but it's probably good if you have somebody that, if you want to get into higher dosage, and to be guided by somebody, with it. Some nutritional practitioner. You also have other precursors that helps to produce serotonin, and that's vitamin B6 is part of the process. You have vitamin B3, also known as niacin, and also vitamin C is part of the process also. So serotonin is, as I said, it's just kind of a happy hormone. It just makes you feel relaxed. You have these different antidepressants that the way they function is to prevent the reuptake of the serotonin between 2 synaptic gaps. You have a nerve impulse that come from one side, and then it's supposed to continue with another, to another nerve, and then in between these 2 nerves there's a little bit of a gap. And that's where you have these different neurotransmitters like GABA, serotonin, and they are then secreted from one side then to the other. And they can then either stimulate that nerve impulse, the level of that nerve impulse, or they can block it, and it depends on what type of neurotransmitters that you are, that's being released from one side to the other. So GABA, serotonin, they tend to kind of relax, so that stimulus is not so strong, so you don't have that kind of anxious, revved up. So it just kind of relaxes the system, and you're not overstimulated. You have dopamine, which is another neurotransmitter, which can be beneficial when you are kind of listless and you're not wanting to really do much, and you have no drive, you're just kind of hanging out and then dopamine can be very useful, and that one is kind of more of an engaging or activating hormone. So serotonin, you can get them from the 5-HTP, tryptophan, and B6, B3, vitamin C. Then if you, with the dopamine, that one you can then get through, there's a bean called mucona that has a lot of dopamine in it. And then also you have L-tyrosine, which also is part then of the conversion to dopamine. So yeah, any of these, as I said, both of these are useful then, and both of these are useful in the production of dopamine. If you have too much dopamine, then that can make you a little bit anxious, also a little bit irritable. So you need to kind of control the levels. So if you do much of it, it is good to, again, just have somebody monitor the amounts, somebody that knows.
Can you talk more about the GABA?
Sure. What are you wanting to know?
Well, that's one I wasn't familiar with.
Okay. Well, you have, there are 4 main neurotransmitters. You have the GABA, you have the serotonin, you have the dopamine, and also you have acetylcholine. So those are the 4 main, and what they found is that by controlling mostly the serotonin and the dopamine, you can then impact on the GABA and the acetylcholine. So the dopamine, serotonin tend to be the main ones, and then you have other hormonal substances like noradrenaline and adrenaline, which are then the adrenal hormones, or like steroid hormones, and they get impacted and also by the serotonin and the dopamine. What they've seen is there's kind of the holy triangle that they call when you're dealing with neurotransmitters and hormones. So you have then neurotransmitters, then you have then hormones, or mostly like steroid hormones. And steroid hormones, they include then the hormones then from the adrenals, and you also have male-female hormones. Those are the steroid. And here you have then actually the immune system. So what they found is that by impacting this area, you will then impact these. By impacting this, you'll impact these. So they all are interrelated, which would mean then if you're dealing with stress, if your female hormonal system is out of balance, it's going to impact then your neurotransmitters, which are the ones, makes you feel good, makes you feel happy, or relaxed, or whatever it is that you need to do. Or if you're dealing with some kind of chronic infection, like for instance, you have a lot of people dealing with fungal infections, parasite infections, or maybe a chronic viral infection, or maybe after vaccination, some virus was injected and kind of is laying latent in the system, and that is creating then kind of a chronic infection, and that is then putting stress on the production then of serotonin, dopamine, GABA, acetylcholine, and also then can be impacting then the hormonal system. So. And what they found is that in the immune system, you actually have receptor sites on the immune cells for these neurotransmitters. so that they can actually land onto the and onto the immune, on the white blood cells, for instance. And so how you are feeling is then going to impact your immune system, but then also they've seen that the immune system in itself then produce different neurotransmitters. So all of this is part of the same intelligence. So if you're dealing with an issue in one area, that can be what's causing that you're not happy. Or if you're dealing with a lot of stress, then your immune system can then be challenged, and that can also make it so that you are depressed or anxious. So GABA in itself is just an amino acid, and it's just one of the ones that just helps to calm down the system. And it's fantastic in that area. And people that have a hard time falling asleep and feel a little bit anxious right before going to bed, then GABA is incredible for that. And then if you combine that with something like lithium orotate, if your thyroid is just running a little bit too quickly, then that's a fantastic thing just to kind of calm down yourself before going to bed. So, and if you're anxious throughout the day, then you can do a little GABA and lithium orotate and maybe passion flower throughout the day, and that has a fantastic impact on the body.
Is passion flower usually taken in a tea or a capsule or a liquid? Or?
I like tincture best with passion flower because it's the quickest delivery. Yeah, I mean, you can do capsule. It just takes a little bit longer to affect you. So yeah, like 30 drops of passion flower would be great. Or if you really need a big hit, then do 2 droppers, which is about 60 drops.
Is it something people can feel like pretty quick?
You can, yeah. So it can, within a few, like 5-10 minutes, you should start to feel something. So it should get into your bloodstream, pretty quickly. Yeah, so it's just one of those herbs that I like a lot. You have another herb that was very common before. It hasn't been used much recently. Is kava kava. And that was used a lot for anxiety before, and for some reason it's not available as much here in the United States, and I think in Europe they almost, because it was so effective, then they made it into like a prescription substance. Mm-hmm. So, but that's a great herb also for when you're dealing with anxiety.
What about your thought processes versus physical malfunction? How do you differentiate between the two, or are they both go hand in hand?
So you have the mind-body connection. So where does one begin and where does the other one end? So when you're dealing with these kind of things, it's good then to address it from both angles, so that you work both on the physical aspect and also on the emotional aspect. As you saw, I mean, the immune system, neurotransmitters has a lot to do then with your mind, how you're feeling emotionally, and so all these are kind of mind processes that takes place. And the immune system then have all these receptor sites. The immune system is a very physical thing, but it has all these receptor sites of the neurotransmitters. So, which means that your mind is then affecting your immune system, but then your immune system is then again affecting your mind, so they correlate with each other continually. So another thing that is important is an issue called estrogen dominance. And what does that mean? Is anyone that's heard that term before? And this actually relates to both men and women. So this is a big issue for actually for all of us currently. And the reason being is that you have these hormonal substances that we're continually exposed to. And these hormonal substances are things like pesticides, cleaning agents, new smell, from the new carpet smell, from paint, from sofa, from car, and we're exposed to all these chemicals, and all these chemicals have an estrogenic impact on the body. And estrogen is very, kind of drives the body, it's very stimulating. So it can then create a lot of anxiety in itself, and also something that it does is it actually blocks, and remember that conversion from T4 to T3, it blocks that conversion from taking place, so it actually interferes then with the thyroid function. So by being exposed to all these chemicals, we are then interfering with our function of the thyroid. But also there's a very important balance, which is then the estrogen and then the progesterone. And for men then also you have estrogen and testosterone. And as I said, if you're too estrogen dominant, then that in itself can then create fatigue and also create liver gallbladder issues, create insulin resistance. Also it will create that anxiety. And in addition to that, then you have the female cancers and male cancers, etc. That's connected to the estrogen. So estrogen is not a bad thing, it's just that when we have too much of it in relationship to the testosterone or progesterone, that is when it becomes an issue. And the way to control that is that obviously you want to then minimize your exposure to all these different chemicals. But also you want to then support the elimination of the estrogen. And that is done through then the liver. You have phase 1, phase 2 detoxification in the liver. It's a liver that then helps to break this down, and then if we need more estrogen, then the body can then reassemble it from those components. But if it's too much, this way we need to break it down and then flush it out of the system if it's too much. However, if we're then continually exposed to all these chemicals, then we are then, it's going to overburden our liver. And then we tend to get the estrogen dominant, and then the testosterone levels then falls, progesterone level then falls. So then when the testosterone level falls, and in men they get very docile, tend to get depressed, tend to get this weight around here, so the key to that then is then to eliminate the estrogen. Not really just build up the testosterone, it's more to eliminate the estrogen. For women, again, they tend to get anxious, irritable. If the estrogen progesterone is out of balance, they have a hard time sleeping. It's a set insulin resistance, gallbladder issues, then female hormonal issues. They may bleed heavier, they may get fibroids, they may cysts, etc. So in order to be able to then clear out the estrogen, you need to support the liver, and there foods that are fantastic then help to clear out the estrogen are then the cruciferous vegetables. And what are they?
Broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage.
Beautiful. Long day.
Is kale in the cruciferous family too?
Yeah, it is. Brussels sprouts. So you have the kale, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. And what they do is that they support then the breakdown of the estrogen and makes it water soluble so that the kidneys can flush it out.
How is that on the thyroid? Cruciferous.
If you do too much, it can actually then interfere also with the thyroid function. So you need to find a balance between that. So had a gal that been doing too much kale, and her thyroid crashed and her hair started to fall out. So you want to find a balance with it.
I guess if you cook it, it makes it better.
It does, yeah. So it breaks down then those components that inhibits the thyroid function. So, so you have the cruciferous vegetables, and then you have herbs. I mean, a fantastic herb is the herb dandelion. It's just incredible for this. And then also milk thistle is very, very good. You have turmeric is very helpful also. Then you have different amino acids that are beneficial. One is glycine, and the other one is L-taurine. And glycine in itself is fantastic also. I mean, it has a very relaxing effect on the body. So if you want to get, kill two birds with one stone, if you do glycine, you then help to remove a lot of the chemicals, and at the same time you get that relaxing effect. And